once again, an opportunity to capitalize on a misfortune for Verstappen is blundered by Leclerc and Ferrari. The Hungarian Grand Prix seemed to open up a wonderful opportunity for Leclerc and Ferrari to close down what was a 60-point or 63-point lead for Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship going into the summer break. He didn't have a great qualifying, only qualifying 10th, with Perez 11th knocked out in Q2, with both Ferraris 2nd and 3rd behind George Russell, with a very impressive pole position for him and first pole position of his career. The impressive pace of the Red Bull, plus some, again, questionable decisions by Ferrari during the race, led to Verstappen winning the race and Leclerc down in 5th, losing more points and taking the gap now to 80 points as we go into the summer break. It is becoming an unattainable gap now. It is very large. It's not been this big for a while, unless the driver has had supreme dominance throughout the first half of the season. The championship did seem very close, only 4 or 5 races ago, but it now does seem to be the question of, is it already over? Has Verstappen won his second title already? Is there anything Ferrari and Charles Leclerc can do to pull it back? Because unless that car starts breaking down and not finishing and not scoring, an 80-point lead is very unattainable to close down. Credit where credit's due, it was a great race from Max Verstappen, utilizing pit stops and strategy and all the rest of it to climb up the field slowly. He did get some lucky breaks when Leclerc ended up doing an additional pit stop on top of everybody else, again close towards the end of the race, like we saw Ferrari do last race with Sainz. So it's an interesting choice. It kind of gives the feeling that Ferrari don't quite know how their tyres are going to work in races, and that feeling of them not knowing really what's going on and just kind of winging it seems to be the vibe that's coming out from Ferrari, which of course is not the way you win world championships. Definitely something they're going to have to sort out definitely towards the end of this season, but even now I'd probably be looking to 23 and really thinking about what needs to be done in that team to stop this confusion and odd strategy choices coming out, because something isn't clicking, something isn't working at Ferrari, and that is why they're throwing away championships. They had arguably at the beginning of the season the fastest car on the grid. Red Bull made some gains. There was close competition between the two. It was always a coin flip on who was going to come out best. Was the circuit going to suit Ferrari? Was the circuit going to suit Red Bull? And still so we kind of have that mix of some circuits suit Ferrari better, some circuits Ferrari have the better pace, and vice versa onto Red Bull. But whenever Ferrari have the advantage, it seems Red Bull are right on their heels, whereas whenever Red Bull have the advantage, Ferrari can't even seem to keep up. But once again, sneaking up on the heels of Ferrari, maybe not quite, but certainly looking like a threat now, is Mercedes, with their second double podium finish in 2 races now. Very impressive from them. Perhaps they're getting on top of their issues. Perhaps these circuits are suiting them better, perhaps the climax, whatever. There's a multitude of reasons why Mercedes may be better at these circuits, may be capitalizing well. Maybe they're just capitalizing on other teams' mistakes, and that could be as simple as how they're getting their foot in the door. But what was a very secure 3rd place team is now starting to make some ripples close to the front, and maybe Ferrari are going to have to start looking over their shoulders as well as ahead, and that certainly would be a headache for the Scuderia. If Ferrari lose second in the championship to Mercedes after the start of the season they had, after the extremely good car they had at the beginning of the year, that is not going to be good come November. And if that is the case, if Ferrari do lose second in the Constructors to Mercedes, some heads have definitely got to roll at Ferrari. Just off the podium, but more focusing on defending from behind, was Carlos Sainz in 4th, Sergio Perez 5th, and then Charles Leclerc 6th. I think I said 5th earlier, but he was 6th, so my bad. A strong performance again from Lando Norris in the McLaren. He's seeming to be a consistent bottom 10 finisher, so at least bringing home points to McLaren, albeit not as many as they probably want, but enough to keep them in the fight with some of the other midfield teams, at least not see them tumble all the way down the order. But it isn't looking great for McLaren. They haven't seemed to find the rejuvenation, if you will, that Mercedes has found in developing problems and issues with the car, or in terms of fixing, problems and issues with the car. You don't want to develop problems, that's not a good thing. Whereas McLaren seem to be on top of their issues, but just can't find that edge they need to push them to be able to fight at the front. And that's why they're not on podiums. That's why they're not even thinking about podiums and are just happy to be in the top 10. But again, Ricciardo did not finish in the top 10. Again, a little bit disappointing from him. Still seemingly not gelling with that car at all. And of course, you have to believe that it's probably more set up to Norris's driving style because the team do favour Norris. I don't think that's a secret. And if it is, it's a badly kept one. So maybe he really just doesn't vibe with the car the same way as Norris does. But from the Ricciardo we knew back in 2014, 15, 16 in Red Bull, this is a far cry from the driver we once had. So something's got to change for Ricciardo, and quick, because lots of talking now going on seats, and the talk and the rumours about him not being in McLaren next year, even though he has a contract for next year. He might want to keep that contract for next year, but it may be that the team don't. And that seems to be the rumour at the moment. But obviously they need to have someone in place to put in the seat. But I'm not 100% confident we'll have Ricciardo in that McLaren next year. Another great day at the office for Alpine with a double point score, albeit an 8th and a 9th with Ocon ahead of Alonso, but still more points coming in. It's still 2 sets of points as well. Double points is a better way to put it. Coming in for Alpine, just again, another quiet race, nothing too strenuous from either driver, but points in the bag. And finally, Sebastian Vettel capped off the top 10. Speaking of Vettel, just ahead of this race, we had the announcement that Sebastian Vettel will retire from Formula One at the end of this year. It is a shame to see him go in this way. It's always a shame to see drivers that were at their peak kind of disappear off into obscurity before they leave. If I was a driver, I'd want to leave on a high rather than kind of scrambling for points and hoping to get 10th. But alas, that is the way the sport goes. But it will be a shame not to see Sebastian Vettel on the grid next year. It's going to be interesting to see what he does post F1. A vast array of things could come up. He could end up driving somewhere else, or being in a managerial position in a race team. I think he'd probably suit that quite well. But we will keep an eye, and if we know before the end of the season, I'll talk about it. And if we don't, I probably won't, because it will no longer be relevant to these videos. On Vettel's announcement that he is leaving, that does in fact leave open a seat at Aston Martin. This could be where Ricciardo goes if McLaren do drop him, if they do have someone to bring in. There's a couple of other drivers up and down the grid who don't have seats as well. Mick Schumacher is a shoo-in for this seat. Vettel has expressed his opinion that Schumacher would be great in this car, funnily enough. Vettel wanting to get Schumacher in, and Schumacher's Haas contract does terminate at the end of 2022. So thus far, that hasn't been renewed, and Schumacher is out of a drive next year as well. So there's a couple of options. It's probably one of those seats that's not going to get filled until the end of the year, and it will drag on, and everyone will just keep surmising and guessing who might take the seat. But as always, as soon as we know, I will talk about it in the next relevant one of these. Summer break time, which means silly season's probably about to go crazy, and we're about to get lots of different things and rumors and talks and all the rest of it. So look forward to those. Obviously, when we return from the summer break, we have the Belgium Grand Prix, which last year was not really a race. So let's hope for no rain in Spa this year, so we can actually get some racing done. That would be nice. And yeah, we'll hopefully have some more driver market stuff to talk about. Potentially the new calendar we'll have to talk about. That normally comes out in October, so that'll probably be close to October we start talking about that stuff. And yeah, otherwise, here comes the sun, hopefully, and a break, and no F1 for a few weeks. But that's all I have to talk about today. Please let me know your thoughts, feelings, comments, opinions, and everything on the race, on anything that happened around the race that I forgot and didn't talk about right now, on anything down in the comment box down below, and I will see you down there to carry on the conversation. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button, some Formula One love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! I'm ramming. I'll give myself pins and needles again. Owie! Ow! Ow, my foot! Ow!